If you've ever felt frustrated or uncertain about how to manage your money, or if you felt that somebody should have taught you what to do with your money, you are not alone, and this video is definitely for you. Hi, if we haven't met before, my name is Jessica, and on this channel we talk all things money, and I share with you my own journey to financial independence. In all those years we spend in educational institutions, no one ever teaches us how to deal with money or how to manage money. And it's one skill, it's one life skill that is so important. It's something we need every single day, no matter where you live around the world, yet nobody teaches us how to deal with it. Isn't that crazy? Today I'm going to share with you how I manage my own money. And if your goal in this new year, is to improve your finances, you are going to want to take notes. I manage my finances like a business. Think of it this way. If you were going to invest in a business, what are you going to look for? You're going to want to make sure that there's a way to track revenue and profits and losses. You're going to want to make sure that the company that you're going to invest in understands these basic things. As an investor, you're going to want to make sure that there are controls in place for this company. You're going to want to make sure that it operates with efficiency. It optimizes its resources. So at the end of the day, the company is profitable. Someone analyzes the results. In most cases, that's the CFO of a company. You want to make sure that someone projects for the future and they are predicting certain things in advance and they're planning for that. And there are no surprises at the end of the year or at the end of the quarter. And that's what you would expect as a shareholder of any company. You would expect that these basic financial fundamentals are in place. Otherwise, the company has no hopes of being successful. And if it does end up being successful, you know that that's a fluke, and a fluke cannot be repeated. Now, apply the same structure to your financial life. Do this regardless of how much money you make. So your job is to act like the CEO or CFO of your own life, because you are. So you are the CEO or CFO of your own financial life. So it's in your best interest to make sure that you know what's going on in your financial life, regardless of how much money you make. Sometimes it's easy for us to overlook just how much money we make in our lifetimes. So even if we take the average, an average person makes about $60,000 a year, and if they work for 45 years, which is what an average person does, from the time that they start making income to the time they retire, it's about a 45-year span. So that average person makes $2.7 million in their lifetime. So to some that might not seem enough, to others that might seem a lot of money, but regardless of how you look at it, that's a pretty good amount of money. So that's the amount of money an average person is going to handle in their lifetime, even if they make the average of $60,000 a year. So it's in your best interest to learn how to manage that like a business, because that is a lot of money. So I'm going to walk you through at a high level what I do month by month. And I'm going to keep it brief, so don't worry, we're not going to talk about 12 different episodes here to cover every single month, but it will give you a high-level understanding of what I'm talking about. So let's begin in January. So if you happen to be watching this video in January, February timeline, you've got a pretty good stretch of time ahead for you to be able to plan this, but it doesn't matter what time of the year you're watching. You can put this in place at any time. Let's look at this month by month. So in January, you want to set your financial goals. Hopefully you set your life goals, and we're not talking about New Year's resolutions here. We are actually talking about goals that have specific timelines and specific plan for you to make them come true. And so in January, you want to set your goals, but let's talk about mainly financial goals. What do you want to accomplish for that year? So it's a really good idea to make sure that you are clear on those goals and you write them down. Second thing you want to do in January is to set up a plan for tracking certain things. I did a video on a few things that you should track every year. I'll link that video down below in the description box so you can check that out if you haven't seen it. But what you want to make sure is that you're going to be tracking, for example, your expenses. So if you're going to do it on a spreadsheet, make sure that you have that ready to go. You don't need a spreadsheet. You can also track that in a simple notebook, but whatever mechanism you're going to use, make sure that you're all set and ready to go. Take some time in January, take a couple of hours and make sure that you are ready and set to go. The third thing you want to do in January or at the beginning of the year is make sure that you know what's coming up in terms of expenses. So not just your basic expenses, but for example, when is your car insurance coming up for renewal? When is your home insurance coming out for renewal? Or any other type of expenses that you could negotiate, for example, on a year-by-year basis. And also it helps you sort of project what you're looking at into the future, into the next 12 months, so that if these are expenses that are slightly higher than normal, you won't be stuck having to charge these on your credit card, and you're going to end up paying a lot more if you're not paying that expense off fully at the end of that month. Knowing what's coming up in the year gets you ahead of the game. So let's say if it's your mortgage renewal coming up or some other kind of insurance renewal, if you know that's coming up, let's say 3 months, 4 months, 5 months down the road, you can start preparing for it. Prepare to negotiate. You can negotiate rates down. You can negotiate almost anything. This is how you get ahead in your finances. This is how you take the driver's seat. So you run your finances versus it running you. If you don't plan for it, you are going to find yourself in a position where your renewal's coming up, for example. Now you're at the mercy of that financial institution. Don't put yourself in that position. Make sure that you take control. Give yourself 2 to 3 hours. So set aside 2 to 3 hours in January and set up your year, basically everything that we just talked about. You'll find it highly satisfying and rewarding when you do that. And also going forward in the year, give yourself about 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours. So expect to spend about 2 to 3 hours every single month at the end of the month looking after your finances. And we're going to talk about a little bit more in detail as to what you will do with those 2 to 3 hours. Now, before you balk at the idea, and before you say that's a lot of time every single month, let me remind you, an average person who works 40 hours a week spends another 10 hours a week just, getting ready for work, whether it's getting ready in the morning, getting dressed, commuting to work, doing all of those work-related activities. Average person spends about 50 hours total, including all of that, including your actual work time, including your commute time and everything that you do. That's being more on the conservative side. Some people spend a lot more than that, especially if you have a long commute. In any case, so if you are spending about 50 hours a week dedicated to work, and if you get 2 weeks off a year for vacation, that is 2,500 hours every single year you spend working or in work-related activities. So you're dedicating 2,500 hours a year bringing money in. So that's what, 210 hours a month. So out of 210 hours, 2 hours a month taking care of that money is more than reasonable. So be sure to set aside those couple of hours every single month to take care of your money. Now that's January. So at the end of that month, of course, you want to make sure that you're tracking your expenses as well. Just that shouldn't take you long if you are all set up. That should take you maybe 10-15 minutes, depending on how you decide to track. So at the end of January, you want to do that as well. So in February, same thing. There's nothing much to do other than at the end of the month, you want to track your expenses. Now, when it comes to March, you want to set aside again those 2 to 3 hours at the end of the month. You want to do a quarterly review. What does a quarterly review entail? This is where you're going to spend a little bit more time. You're going to look at all of your expenses from January, February, March. It's easy if you've been already tracking it. You just have to look at the total, look at the big picture, ask yourself, are you on track? And, things happen. Sometimes you may have spent on a certain category more than you wanted to spend. This is a time for you to analyze that and step back and take a look and ask yourself, How will you pivot? How can you adjust going forward? And it's a lot easier to make adjustments 3 months into the year rather than at the end of the year looking at your expenses and looking at your financial plan and saying to yourself, oops, I missed it. So, and do that on a quarterly basis. And the other thing you want to look at on a quarterly basis, which is March is the first time you'll do it at the end of March, is just have a look at your investments and just have a look at how they're performing. Now, this is not where you want to get too caught up in what's going up, what's coming down in terms of stock market, for example, because that's not my investment strategy, because I think if you continue looking at it in short term, this is where people make poor decisions, because remember, investing in stock market is a long-term game. The reason why I want you to look at, or the reason I look at my investments on a quarterly basis is mainly to look at it and say, or to ask yourself, are you putting enough towards your investments? For example, if I want to make sure that my retirement contributions are maximized, and I generally set it up at the beginning of the year so that it comes off of my paycheck every single month, so I don't really have to mess around with it. But you can take a look and say, if you weren't maximizing it, if your payments weren't maximized toward, let's say, your RSP or your TFSA or your 401k, whichever country you happen to be in, then that's a good opportunity for you to look at it and say, could I increase it? I've kept my expenses fairly low. I do have some extra money. Maybe I can top up my retirement savings. So that's something that you can take a look at. Also, it's an opportunity for you to look at your savings rate. What is your savings rate? So take a look at what you've spent, let's say in these 3 months, when you total all of your expenditures, and then you take a look at your net income. That's another one of the things that you want to track. Again, watch the video in the description box if you haven't seen that. One of the 3 things that you should track. So when you look at your net income and your expenses, again, you want to look at your net income, not gross. And that gives you your spending rate. Let's say you brought home $5,000 in net income in a month, last month, and you spent $3,500. All of your expenses were $3,500. Now that, if you divide 3,500 by 5,000, that's 70%. That means your spending percentage was 70%. You spent 70% of your net income. That leaves you 30%. So your savings rate in this case is 30%. So do this on a regular basis, at least on a quarterly basis. That gives you a really good idea of how you're doing financially. So you'll do this every quarter, at the end of March, at the end of June, at the end of September, at the end of December. So at least 4 times you give yourself the opportunity to take a look at a detailed look at your finances, take a detailed look at your spending habits and your savings rate. Once you've done that, let's say if we use our example of 30% savings rate, if you are saving 30% or whatever percent you happen to be saving, even if it's 10%, then you ask yourself, where is that going? Is it going where you want it to go? So for example, if you don't have a sanity fund yet or emergency fund, that's the first thing that most of us should have money in, because that's just a peace of mind. It gives you, a form of sanity. That's why I like to call it sanity fund. So make sure that you have a fully funded sanity fund, 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in there. Now, and if you've got that taken care of, then you want to make sure that you maximize your retirement fund and so on and so forth. So it's an opportunity not only for you to understand where you're spending and what your savings rate is, but also what are you doing with that savings rate. Do this on a quarterly basis. Remember, 3 or 4 times a year. So do this on a quarterly basis, just like a business. You want to manage your finances just like a business. at the end of each quarter, you basically are giving yourself a quarterly report. Just like in any business, whether you're the business owner or you're the CEO or you're the CFO, you always look at the quarterly reports. So do this on a quarterly basis. And now we are going into April. And April, the way I like to look at it is think of it as spring cleaning. So you want to take some time. Remember, you have those 2 hours set aside at the end of the month. Take some time to do spring cleaning. What does it mean to do spring cleaning for your finances? Have a look at certain bills. Let's say if you have cable or phone bill or insurance bill, whatever other bill that you might be paying on a regular basis. Ask yourself, how much are you paying versus what you could get out there in the marketplace? So maybe you want to make a couple of phone calls. Let's say take your cable and internet bill and make a couple of phone calls, call the competitors of the company that you're with and ask them what kind of a deal you could get. You could spend or you could save a lot of money by simply shopping around. Remember, just because you have a particular service doesn't mean you have to stick with them forever or throughout the year. So take this time to do some spring cleaning and save yourself some money. The other thing that you can look at is look at your phone. Look at all the apps that you have. Do you need those apps? Do you use those apps? Are you paying for certain apps that you don't really need? What about streaming services? How many streaming services do you have? So just use this opportunity to spring clean your finances, get rid of the clutter, get rid of any extra spending that is not necessary, get rid of those. And it's a really good way to do that. And then if you do that in April, you can even do half of those things in May. You don't have to do everything in April. So at the end of May, so let's say you made a couple of phone calls at the end of April, you looked at your cable bill, you looked at your phone bill, and then maybe at the end of May, when you're sitting down to do your expense tracking at the end of May, because that's something that you're going to do every single month, then maybe you call your insurance company, your car insurance company, or it really depends on when those things are coming up for renewal. So remember, in January, you want to be very clear. So whenever that happens to be, that's the month, sort of a month or two in advance. That's when you want to schedule those phone calls and you want to shop around. And then at the end of June now, so we've gone through April, we've gone through May. At the end of June, it's another time for your quarterly review. This is going to be your Q2 report for your finances. So you do that. So basically you just repeat. So I'm not going to go through every single month now. So you have an idea. Every single month, at the end of every single month, you want to track your expenses. And at the end of every quarter, you're going to do what we talked about for March. When you get down to December, that is a wonderful time of year in so many different ways. So if you've done this throughout the year, you're really going to look forward to sitting down in December. You can do that during the holiday time when you have some time off work. I absolutely love to set some time aside in December to do this for myself. I do this very close to Christmas time because you've got extra time. All of us have a little bit of extra time over the holidays, and dedicate that to your finances. So in December, you're going to do your final quarterly review, Q4, and at this point, you're going to have your whole year's picture. So take a look at your picture for the whole year, your financial picture. And at this time, you are also going to do your net worth statement. Again, watch the video in the description box for more details. So you are going to do your net worth statement at the end of the year. And then you are going to sit back. You're going to be very proud of yourself because you've done a fantastic job, and you're going to set up the following year just like you did this year, and you have your finances under control. Celebrate your success, have a glass of champagne because you deserve it. And there you have it. That is how I manage my money, and it can be a lot of fun. You just have to create your own rituals and practices, and managing your money can be a ton of fun. And don't forget to leave some comments down below. Let me know if you have a practice or how do you manage your money, and which one of these tips that you found the most helpful. I would love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.